The Book of Beginnings, Lesson 30. Feels like it's been 30. This one we're going to start in the 42nd chapter of the book of Genesis. We've been following through Joseph's life, and a lot of people, I don't know how many sermons have been done over the years on Joseph and his life, and different examples and things that you can use his life for, and the type of person he was. So this tonight, we're getting close to the end of the book of Genesis. We're in the 42nd chapter. There's only 50 chapters, and I can tell you tonight we're going to hit some of several different chapters to get through this, because otherwise this could get lengthy and it's talking about the same story. So I'll see how much you all remember. Genesis 42 verse 5, the sons of Israel were among those who came to buy grain. So we're getting in the middle of a story here. They had heard there was grain in Egypt, so Jacob's sons, all except for Benjamin, naturally not Joseph because he'd been sold into slavery, and they have come to Egypt to buy grain so they don't starve. And it's a pretty good trip. So anyway, the sons of Israel were among those who came to buy grain, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. Joseph was in charge of the country. He sold grain to all its people. His brothers came and bowed down before him with their faces to the ground. What do you think Joseph was thinking when this was going on? Of course, they didn't know. With their faces to the ground, when Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he treated them like strangers and spoke harshly to them. So, why did he recognize them and they didn't recognize him? They weren't expecting him. They didn't. Pardon me? Well, did they think he was dead? Did they know he was dead? They sold him into slavery. So, how many? It wasn't the last time they saw. How old was he the last time they saw him? He was 17. Joseph was 17 when they saw him, when they sold him into slavery. Well, this is 20 some years later. So he's, he'd be much older. Plus the fact, you remember last session we had, we talked about when the Pharaoh found out that he could interpret dreams, he sent for him, and they cut his hair, they shaved him, and did all this. So he was dressed like, looked like, his fashion, everything about him was Egyptian. He looked Egyptian. Well, they were older, 20 some years older too, but when you're like 20 years ago, I didn't change as much as I did from when I was 17 until I was 40. I changed more then than I have in the last 20 years. That's the way I think anyway, except for the color of my hair has gotten a good bit lighter. I have ran across a picture the other day of like about 2008, something like that. I think it was about 2008, 2009. And I thought, man, this boy had dark hair back then. I don't have as darker hair now. But still, you don't, as you get older, you don't change as much as you do between the younger years into the middle age and so on. And so he has changed, plus he's dressed different, plus they don't expect him to be there. Who would think that the second highest ranking person in Egypt would be their brother that they sold into slavery? They wouldn't have had the foggiest idea. So they didn't recognize it, but he recognized them. So what he should have done was run down and say, hey, I'm Joseph, I'm your brother. It's good to see you. Is that what you would have done? What would you have done? What would you have done if your brothers had sold you into slavery? What would you have done, sir? He treated them like strangers, spoke harshly to them. Why would he speak harshly to them? Why would he speak harshly to them instead of just speaking to them like he would anybody else? Keep going. Why should he trust his brothers? Would you trust your brother? I mean, all of these brothers were in on the deal of selling him into slavery. One way or another, they were all in on it, except for Benjamin, because he wasn't there. So he couldn't trust his brothers. So let's see the process he's going through here. 42 verse 8. Although Joseph recognized his brothers, they did not recognize him. Joseph remembered his dreams. So he remembered the dreams. When he saw them, he remembered the two dreams that he had about that had to do with his family bowing down to him, which I said at the time when I read that, it's not very smart of him. And at 17 years old, you do stupid things that you wouldn't do now that I'm 40 years old. Things are different now than what they were back then, and you don't think as rationally as what you do. And he didn't, so he told him about his dream. But anyway, it said Joseph remembered his dreams about them and said to them, "You are spies." So here he is. He accuses them of being spies. So he's going to work them over a little bit. "You have come to see the weakness of the land." Verse 10 says, "No, my lord, your servants have come to buy food," they said. "We are all sons of one man. We are honest." We are honest. We are honest. Well, they might have gotten honest by this time. We don't know. But they didn't practice honesty back when a chapter or so ago. "We are honest. Your servants are not spies." "No," he said to them, "you have come to see the weakness of the land." And of course, the question is, were they honest? That's a good question. Said Joseph remembered his dreams. That's the thing that it put in there. So we know that he was remembering how they handled this particular situation. And what are we supposed to do when people do us wrong? We're supposed to forgive them, right? Do we always do it in a hurry? And I hear people say, "I can forgive them, but I can't forget." Well, if you say that, you've not forgiven them. So we have to choose to forget. And what I mean by forget is we don't hold it against them anymore. So that's what I mean by forget. You put it aside. That's not the thing you think about. 42 verse 10. "No, my lord, your servants have come to buy food," they said. "We are all sons of one man. We are honest. Your servants are not spies." No, he said to them, "You have come to see the weakness of the land." But they replied, "We, your servants, were 12 brothers. Now listen to what he says, what they say here. "Were 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. The youngest is now with our father, and one is no longer living." They didn't know they were talking to him. It is no longer living. This is the honest men. They just said they were honest. They didn't know if he was dead or alive. Verse 14. "Then Joseph said to them, I have spoken. You are spies. This is how you will be tested." So what was Joseph really doing? He was testing them. He was seeing how they were and how they would react, and see how he does it. "As surely as Pharaoh lives," you notice he didn't say in the name of God. He said, "as surely as Pharaoh lives." So he's speaking as an Egyptian. "You will not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here." So he's telling them, you got to bring your youngest brother here, or you're not going to get anything if you don't bring your youngest brother here. "The rest of you will be imprisoned so that your words can be tested to see if they are true. If they are not," does he know that they have a younger brother? Yes, but he's not letting them know that. "If they are not, then as surely as Pharaoh lives, you are spies." So Joseph imprisoned them together for 3 days. So he threw them all in prison. He throws all of his brothers in prison. That's better than they did him. And I just put the question, was he testing them? And he's wanted to see how they would handle the situation with Benjamin. I mean, they turned on Joseph and sold him. They were going to kill him. Dumped him in a hole. They were going to kill him. And so how do you test them now to see if they've changed? Well, you got another brother, a younger brother. Verse 21. "Then they said to each other," now listen to the conversation they have with each other. Obviously, we are being punished for what we did to our brother. We saw his deep distress when he pleaded with us, but we would not listen. That is why this trouble has come to us. But Reuben replied, didn't I tell you not to harm the boy? But you wouldn't listen. Now we must account for this, for his blood. Of course, all the conversations they're having, Joseph is speaking to them through an interpreter. He's speaking Egyptian, and the interpreter is interpreting it to his brothers, so they don't know that he knows what they're saying. Verse 23. They did not realize Joseph understood them, since there was an interpreter between them. He turned away from them and wept. Then he turned back and spoke to them. He took Simeon from them and had him bound before their eyes. Why Simeon? Why would he pick Simeon? The oldest was Reuben. The next oldest was Simeon. So he had just heard them talking. He just heard Reuben say, didn't I tell you not to harm the boy? So my thinking is he takes the next oldest, which is Simeon, and he keeps him, and he has him bound and keeps him in prison and sends him back. And his brothers rush right back to get him, right? Chapter 43, verse 14. May God Almighty cause the man to be merciful to you, so that he will release your other brother and Benjamin to you. As for me, if I am deprived of my sons, then I am deprived. Come in the house. This is Jacob speaking, and I wanted this particular verse because this is after they had gone back and they told him we have to bring Benjamin back. We can't go back and get any more grain until we bring Benjamin back with us. And he said, may God Almighty, I don't know if you remember it or not, but when you see God Almighty in the Old Testament, it comes from the Hebrew name El Shaddai. And this is one of the, I think, 4 or 5 times in Genesis when he uses that particular name. May God Almighty cause the man to be merciful to you, so that they will release your brother Simeon and Benjamin and bring them back. So Jacob he's agreeing to what they say to some degree. So what was the rest of the story? What's the rest of what happened here? Somebody tell me. They take Benjamin. And well, let's go back up just a minute. When they left, they paid for their grain. They came back and they had gotten they were ready to camp for the night, and they opened their bags, and all of them had their money in the bag. And they were did you think they wanted to go back to Egypt? But they didn't have a choice. So they went back, and they took gifts with them, as well as carrying the money back, so they could explain to them, look, we put the money in there. We don't know how it got back in our bags. And so the whole story, so they have gone back to Canaan and have come back. Now they have to go back to Egypt again and ask for grain, and they're bringing Benjamin with them. So it catches us up to where we are here. They were seated before him in order of age, from the firstborn to the youngest. The men looked at each other in astonishment. So when they came back, when they told Joseph that, look, we paid for it, he said, I know you did. You paid for it. There's no big deal. And they had brought gifts for him as well. And so he said, you're gonna have lunch with me. So they sat down. But look what Joseph did. He seated them according to age. And they said, the men looked at each other in astonishment. How would Joseph know which one was the oldest and which one was the youngest? How would he know which is? So it's getting more and more mysterious all the time. But he's not going to let them off the hook yet. 44 verse 1. Then Joseph commanded his steward, fill the men's bags with as much food as they can carry, and put each one's money at the top of his bag. Put my cup, the silver one, at the top of the youngest one's bag, along with his grain money. So he did as Joseph told him. So now you know the story of what happened there, and they get back out and they find out, this is bad. And 44 verse 3, it says, at the morning light, the men were sent off with their donkeys. They had not gone very far from the city when Joseph said to his steward, get up, pursue the men, and when you overtake them, say to them, why have you repaid evil for good? Isn't this the cup that my master drinks from and uses for divination? What you have done is wrong. So he's working them over before he gets to the point where he can release them from their agony here. He said, so he sends them after him, and whose bag is the cup in? It's Benjamin's, which is the one that they promised that they were going to bring back. So we'll be sure to, in fact, Reuben had told his dad, he said, look, if I don't bring Benjamin back, you can kill 2 of my sons. Which is kind of a stupid thing to say. If I don't bring your son back, you can kill 2 of your grandsons. It didn't make much sense. So Judah then started speaking for the crowd, which was smarter because he used more sense than they did. But so now he's captured them again. Verse 6. When he overtook them, he said these words to them. They said to him, why does my Lord say these things? Your servants could not possibly do such a thing. We even brought back to you from the land of Canaan the money we found at the top of our bags. How can we steal gold and silver from your master's house? Now listen to what they say. They haven't looked in the bags yet. Look what they say. His sons say, if any of us is found to have it, he must die, and we will also become my Lord's slaves. So ever whose bag this is found in, he's going to die. Yeah. Verse 10, the steward replied, what you have said is right, but only the one who is found to have it will be my slave, and the rest of you will be blameless. So they say, well, one of us is going to be kept behind, but see how this goes. 44:33. Now please let your servant remain here as my Lord's slave in place of the boy. Let him go back with his brothers. For how can I go back to my father without the boy? I could not bear to see the grief that would overwhelm my father. Who's speaking here? Who's talking now? It's Judah. Judah is the one that's talking to him. He said, I'll take his place. So here Joseph is testing them to see what they'll do, how they'll handle Benjamin, if they'll handle Benjamin in the same way they handled him. And Judah speaks up and says, no. He said, instead of taking him, I'll be your slave. He volunteered. Is this the difference in the way they were talking and what they did back when Joseph was sold into slavery? And I put, has Joseph's test worked? Yeah, it worked. He found out what their heart really was. Yeah, that's kind of a tough way to do it. You think we read this story, or we talk about this story to tell this story, and we can do it in just a few minutes, the whole thing. But think about, they bought the grain, and they went back home all the way from Egypt to Canaan. They ate up most all the grain before they came back. So all this time, Simeon has been a slave. He's been in prison all this time. I'm quite sure he was thinking, boys, I want you to hurry up. Come on back. I would like to go home. So this took a long period of time. And this is, so when we're thinking about it as just a story, it's different than we think about it if we were living this particular thing ourselves. And did he find out his brothers had changed? Yes. Chapter 45, verse 4. Then Joseph said to his brothers, please come near me. And they came near. I am Joseph, your brother, he said, the one you sold into Egypt. And now don't be worried or angry with yourselves for selling me here, because God sent me ahead of you to preserve life. Now, how do you think they reacted? How do you think they hit them? Second most powerful man in Egypt. And now we found out this is the one we sold into slavery. And he's telling us, don't worry about this. God sent him. He used all this to send us ahead. So, I want to discuss something shortly here. Do we really have free will? Do we have free will? Well, we're Free Will Baptists. We believe you have free will. And I believe you do have free will. But there's certain things that are going to happen. There's certain things going to happen regardless. Eventually, certain things will happen. If things are prophesied to happen, they will happen. Now, when they happen and how they come in line and so on is a different story, and how it takes place. Things we read about, the end times that we see as what we call the end times, those things will come about, but nowhere in the Bible does it give you a time frame. It doesn't tell you what year. It doesn't tell you how many years it will be. It doesn't, just like every nation that has ever existed in the world up until the ones that exist now have ceased to exist. The Roman Empire was the last major empire that existed, and it failed and fell completely apart. And eventually the United States will, if it follows the way of the world, but it doesn't have to be next year. It doesn't have to be the next 10 years, the next 20 years. And I personally think a lot of how long it will be depends on us. Depends on what we do. So yes, I think we have free will. I said, could Joseph and his brothers have changed the course they took to get Joseph into the position to save all this? If God had wanted to get them in and they hadn't sold him, could he have gotten Joseph into power? Could he have gotten Joseph into position? Could he have gotten... So this is not the only way that it could have happened. But as far as I'm concerned, the reason it happened is because they sold him into slavery. So God took him out of slavery and did something wonderful with it and wound up saving all of them. So I say we have free will. This particular guy here, he says, the atheist case for determinism. It says, accepting that we are governed not by free will, but by the processes of the body could provide a positive vision for society. In other words, many atheists believe this, Richard Dawkins is one, that human beings, we really don't make any decisions. It's because it's in our DNA, whatever is there is what's going to happen. Well, to some degree, that's true. We're different families are subject to certain illnesses more than certain other families because of DNA. Certain people are immune to certain things because it's in their DNA. My grandmother on my mother's side had smallpox. My brother Terry, when he went to get a smallpox shot, it wouldn't take. And they tried again, it wouldn't take. And it's because he was immune to smallpox. It was probably because my grandmother had smallpox. So there's certain things that DNA determines, but according to atheists, according to Richard Dawkins, what's the phrase he uses? Anyway, you're controlled by your genetics. You're controlled by your genes. There's nothing that you can do about it. You just enjoy life the best you can, because when it's over, you're done. That's a good way to look at life, isn't it? 45:7. He sent me ahead of you to establish you as a remnant within the land and to keep you alive by a great deliverance. Therefore, it was not you who sent me here, but God. So God sent him, but how he got there was a different story. He has made me a father to Pharaoh, lord of his entire household, and ruler over all the land of Egypt. He had come from a slave all the way to second in command in Egypt. Verse 25. So they went up from Egypt and came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan. Now, would you like to have this conversation? If you're his brothers who had come back with a blood-stained coat and to let him think that his son Joseph was dead. And now they got to go back and they got to tell, we got something we want to tell you. They said, Joseph is still alive and he is ruler over all the land of Egypt. Jacob was stunned. I guess so. Would you be? Jacob was stunned, for he did not believe them. But when they told Jacob all that Joseph had said to them, and when he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to transport him, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. Then Israel, notice it's been calling him Jacob up to now, and now it refers to him as Israel. Enough, my son Joseph is still alive. I will go see him before I die. So here he is, they spring it on him, and he took it rather well, I think. Verse 31. Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, I will go up and inform Pharaoh, telling him, my brothers and my father's household, who were in the land of Canaan, have come to me. The men are shepherds. They also raise livestock. They have brought their sheep and cattle and all they have. When Pharaoh addresses you and asks, what is your occupation? You are to say, your servants, both we and our fathers have raised livestock from our youth until now. Then you will be allowed to settle in the land of Goshen, since all shepherds are aberrant to Egyptians. Now, is that a custom in Egypt? Is that something that they practice? Is that something that's in there? I can't find any record anywhere in the world except in the Bible that says this. Well, if it says in the Bible, I take it as being true. But here they were. He told him, you just tell him this, and he'll let you stay in the land of Goshen. The land they came from, I like maps. And so I've got two of the same area with different names. This one, because it has Jerusalem in here, which wasn't at the time when we're talking about. There was no Jerusalem there. But you can look at all the different peoples that lived here. Think about how small a group this family is. This is not a very big group of people that has moved to Egypt. And they're living in this land that God has told Abraham, I will give this to your offspring. And part of the covenant had to do with the land they're living on. But look at who we have here. The Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, more Canaanites over here, the Girgashites, the Hittites, the Amorites. You got all these people around here. And some you can see these are in bigger, bolder letters. See the Hivites, the Girgashites, the Canaanites, the Amorites, the Ammonites. All these different nations, the Perizzites, the Hittites, the Moabites, all these people are living, and you have this little family living here in the middle of all of them, and God has taken them up and moved them to the land of Egypt, to a protected area. What happens to this family? They grew. They were there for 400 years. For 400 years. I like when in the starting of the book of Exodus, and it says another Pharaoh came up who didn't know Joseph. I guess so. It's 400 years later. Name me somebody in your family 400 years ago. Can you name anybody at all? Can you name me somebody who lived 400 years ago? If you think about it a little, you might can. We could go back a couple hundred years ago, because we can think of George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and John Adams. We can think of all of them. But when you stop and think about it, 400 years ago, they were here for 400 years, and they multiplied. But they were just a small group of people. What I'm getting at is, when God makes a promise and makes a covenant with you, He does not break His covenant. It doesn't matter how many people are around it. It doesn't matter what He has to do to make it come true. When He made a promise to Abraham, He followed through on His promise until it was fulfilled. Questions?